Ex-racist subreddit. What made you change your mind? My uncle used to be the most racist person I knew and it drove me crazy. But he is an old white man and set in my ways, is what he would say when confronted. It all changed the day his great-granddaughter was born. His granddaughter had married a black man and he was unaccepting until that baby was born. She had him wrapped around her pinky finger from her first breath. Since then there are several mixed children in the family. It's awesome to see the difference in his behavior. He genuinely loves them all and accepts the racially different spouses of his grandchildren and their children. If he hears anyone being racist he shuts it down. Oh man. I worked at a doctor's office a few years ago. We had a patient come in, white lady, carrying a newborn black baby. I mean he was like 2 days old. We chatted a little bit, and she told me she had been on a waiting list to adopt a baby for years. She had gotten a call the night before, saying a woman in Detroit had just given birth and she wants to give up the baby. They asked if she wanted him and explained he was black. She was so excited. She got to the hospital right away, but she told me she had called her parents on the drive over to inform them of the good news. They were elated at first, until they realized their grandchild was going to be black. She told me her parents said that she either chooses them or the baby, because they won't be related to a nope. She said bye. Hung up the phone with no regrets. She was so in love with that baby. He was a cute little guy. It's kind of a personal rule for me that if anyone tells me I have to choose between them and someone else, they're automatically the person who loses out in that decision. It's a policy that has served me pretty well. College roommate was Muslim. Definitely was not a terrorist. Kinda already knew my paps was wrong about that, but when you live with someone for an entire year it takes you from kinda already knew to holy shit that way of thinking is fucked up. I never made the choice really to be racist, but I grew up in South Mississippi and my family wasn't overtly racist, but they were the kind to say racist things behind closed doors and didn't allow us to watch TV shows such as The Cosby Show or Fresh Prince, and definitely no rap music in the house. I absolutely fell in love with a lot of black artists in the early 90s. I loved the hip hop scene at the time and holy shit, Fresh Prince was the best sitcom on television. I played football with 80% black guys and worked at Popeye's Chicken with over half the staff being black. I guess you can say my own real world exposure despite their attempt to shelter me changed me. I cringe at some of the vernacular I used in my early youth, as the N-word was the same as black in my house. I literally was not raised to know that was a bad word. I'm glad that from the age of maybe 12 on I learned to love all people on my own. I wasn't actively racist when young, but my surroundings did affect me. I never once considered myself racist until I started noticing that at times, I would look at a black person and think they're lucky for living in my country. Caucasian majority. This made me start to question myself. Why was I having those thoughts? I guess I had just been subliminally raised that way. You see someone dirty you think ugh. Take a shower. You see someone black you think ugh. Go back to where you came from. Only after realizing this did I start to actively try to rewire my brain, so to say. Glad those times are way beyond me now. I've always felt that this kind of subtle, unconscious racism is more powerful than the overt kind. It's smaller in each individual but far more widespread. It's hard to notice even in yourself without taking the time for some introspection. Not everyone does that. My mom was like this. She was a sweet, kind woman, and I never saw her treat anyone different because of skin color. But she grew up in a time of segregated water fountains and it showed. I had a hell of a time explaining why saying I met the nicest colored lady at the store today wasn't acceptable anymore. Not myself, but men a former racist, or at least, now less racist, friends of mine were able to have their minds changed just by simple exposure, especially to non-whites that didn't fit the stereotype. At first, it starts that they are just one of the good ones. But after a while when they meet enough good ones, they start to realize that the good outnumber the bad and their racial worldview starts to crack. Doesn't work on them all, though. Some are racists due to education and esteem issues. But many are racists simply from lack of exposure to other races, only having what the media environment they live in tell them to fill in that gap. Absolutely, it's all about exposure. It's how Daryl Davis was able to get so many Klansmen to leave the KKK. He just persistently involved himself in their lives. He wanted to learn about their beliefs and practices. He wasn't scared away. He found common ground, mainly through music and religion. And eventually, these people got to genuinely know a black man, and all the ridiculous beliefs and ideologies suddenly stopped making sense. I think it's because once you actually know these people, race is no longer an abstraction. It becomes real. When someone says black people, you'll no longer think of a concept. You'll think of people you know who are black. They are human beings you can tell stories about. So when someone starts generalizing, you think of those people. Black people are violent, uneducated, blah blah blah. When you hear it, you may think of that black neighbor of yours from across the street who let you borrow his lawnmower that one time. He's violent and uneducated? That's not fair. Bill's a nice guy. It becomes real when someone is talking about someone you know rather than just abstractions. I was in grade 10, a young, smart, athletic black kid attending a private school on a basketball scholarship. There were probably 5 black kids total in the high school with around 150-200 kids in total, majority white, the rest Asian and Middle Eastern. Out of the 5 black kids in total, 3 of us were on the basketball team, the other 2 were females also on the female basketball team. Did we ever get bullied by our own classmates, teammates, and even the teachers seemed to give us a harder time? After attending for 2 years and leaving after my grade 11 year due to the stress, unfairness and imbalance of diversity, I attended a public school my last year of high school where there were over 1,000 students of every race. Having a deep hate for others who didn't look like me after those 2 years, going to a public school where everyone just saw you as the person you are and not your outer shell, gave me some enlightenment that racism is taught, not born with it in your blood. My mother told me that I would see a huge change in culture, for the better, and that kids in public school come from different classes, low, middle and upper, and I've got to see white kids who were poorer than me, and white kids who were richer than me, as opposed to the private school where everyone's dad owned a Rolls Royce. Not actually, but you get what I mean. I grew a huge appreciate for every ethnicity and every culture, and realized that it's how you're raised, and how you're brought up through your role models. People that hide behind the white picket fence are narrow-minded and I feel truly sorry for them. I was never racist as far as I can remember, but I used to use racist words all the time, just because they were the words to use. I even said an abbreviation of Pakistani for ages thinking it was just like Brit for British. It was not. I'm a Brazilian black guy and I'd like to congratulate all of you for changing your mind. I've lost my mother yesterday. While I was saying goodbye beside her body, I saw that what we leave behind is an empty vessel. What matters is what is inside. My whole family is quite racist. When I was little I was trying to wrap my head around the rules of the world, so I thought it was as simple as different teams. Blacks versus whites was just like the Red Sox versus the Tigers. Then my grandmother starts going on about how horrible Polish people are and how I'm never to talk to them. So I'm psyched. Screw those Polish people, whatever color they are, we're mortal enemies. Then she points out our Polish neighbor to me, but she's white. I point out to my grandmother that she's white so we're on the same team. My grandmother says no, that she's a mixed breed. I point out that my great granddad was a Shoshone Indian and that I'm a mixed breed. She says that doesn't count. That's when I realized she was just making up the rules and I wasn't going to play games with someone who couldn't stick to the rules. Just curious, but why did your grandma hate Poles? 200 years ago, someone stole a pig. That person was Polish. Mortal enemies ever since. Yes, I'm serious. My grandma never forgave her sister for marrying a Pole. Lol. Was raised in a racist and close community. When I joined the army and met different people, I grew up in a family of racists and my mind was warped to the point I would hate to see them. While I was in high school my closest female friend forced me into a situation where I had to talk to her black friend. Sadly I hated this at the time and was thinking about just leaving and never talking to her again, but all of a sudden we started talking about track and field which I loved doing and so did she. I kinda got over it over time. It was instantly, but that is how I found my future wife and I will never be the same again. I am happy that my friend did that. Sadly she died just before our wedding in a car accident. Grew up in a hillbilly rural shitpile known for white nationalist activity with hillbilly shitpile friends. I never considered myself racist, but I certainly had some severe ingrown biases. Didn't say anything when they started getting implied racist tattoos of Viking runes and working class tokens like red laces while commenting about illegals and scum. It moved to 88 tattoos and I knew what was happening but didn't say anything because I didn't think it would turn violent. I think I comforted myself with the fact that our town has an incredibly low minority population, so I didn't assume anyone was in danger. Dumb. Then friends I had known since middle school got arrested for grouping up and attacking minorities near our city center. The victim was a citizen. He was brown. They assumed illegal. I tried to engage rationally, but by then it was clear what was happening and there was nothing I could say to pull them out of their cult bullshit. At this point I had already started distancing myself from them, which left a huge void because these were essentially my only friends. Certainly eye-opening to see how easily the gentle, kind, intelligent kids I grew up with were turned to violent nationalism within just a couple years. It's a great regret in life that I didn't confront it when I saw the writing on the wall. But they were all loser meth heads and I made the mistaken assumption that their drug addictions and lack of motivation would hinder any negative repercussions from their shit. I was wrong. And if nothing else, if anything similar occurs, I won't make the same mistake twice. Thank you for watching. Check out my Patreon to get early access to future videos. Every patron gets a special thank you message in my videos. If the video slapped, remember to leave a like and subscribe for more videos every single day. See you tomorrow.